Hi, I'm Leon Lovelace, and this is Unstoppable Force. I got a news story for you, and it's about the Flint Water Crisis. Talked about it a little bit in my other videos, just mentioning that's one of the problems we have in our society and our government is government's not protecting the people. And now it's just time for me to just make a video dedicated to the Flint Water Crisis. I should make some more in the future, but I need to make one right now because it's really important, because it's just showing you some of the corruption that our government is just involved in right now, and we need to fight to try to get rid of the corruption because it's just detrimental to our health. Because as a lot of you know, this is started when Governor Snyder, he decided to give a blowjob to his donors and said, you know what, I'm gonna give you big tax breaks. So of course the state of Michigan, they have less money, less revenue than they did before. So whenever they give any money to cities and any towns in that state, of course there's less money for them to dole out. So I read a few articles about Flint, Michigan. They had less revenue before, so a lot of the city council members say, you know what, we gotta figure out how to save money. So what they did was switch from the Detroit water to the Flint River water. In the news report I read, a lot of people that lived there, they knew that the water was contaminated from all just the industrial businesses that would dump, whichever wastewater they had into the river. So quite a few people said, you know what, that's really egregious, and you're just... One of the Flint residents, he called them out, said they were committing genocide because they're just gonna hinder or really damage the health and really put a lot of black people to death, because Flint is just a heavily minority community. So that's one reason why they're having a lot of problems, because of course a lot of just the general public and the society says, you know what, if it's a community of black people, you know what, we're gonna fuck them over, and we're gonna help them less. We're gonna wait a little bit longer, sometimes a lot longer, before we go give them aid, anything like that. We're gonna demonize them. We're gonna slander them, all sorts of shit. We're gonna make sure they have just at least a little bit more difficulties with any issues that arise versus the white community. Because you guys remember Hurricane Katrina. It took forever for the federal government to start actually giving out aid to the residents there. So that was a huge disaster. Flint, Michigan's a disaster. One big problem is that it's been going on for fucking 2 years now. I think it's getting close to being 3 years that they've had lead contaminated water. Jordan's talked to a lot of people in Flint, Michigan. I wish I had some money so I could go and talk to people in Flint and other communities and see what's going on with contaminated water and stuff like that. But he's also talked about how the government's saying the water is okay, it's under the allowable limit, but lead is a highly toxic heavy metal, and it does a whole bunch of damage to our brains, not just adults but children too, and it hinders their growth and development because they're continually developing until you're about 25. So it really causes a lot of different health problems, and they're long term. It's really serious stuff. So it's really detrimental to our ability to just live a healthy, productive life. So it's just been a big tragedy, and a lot of the government officials keep cherry picking about how they only want to test a few homes and not just all the homes. There's a whole bunch of different issues that are starting to arise about how we do have safe drinking standards for our water, but we don't have any bathing standards for our water. because our biggest organ is our skin, because it's over top of our whole body, and our skin has, I guess it has different, so we have different issues with what we put on our body versus what we drink or eat. So that's another interesting thing we need to do, is start saying, hey, the government officials, they need to say, okay, our skin's a little bit different than our internal organs, so we need to start measuring and see what's okay for people to bathe in to make sure we're healthy compared to what we can drink. Because what's going on is that whenever you shower or you bathe in warm or hot water, the lead levels rise because it's heavy metal. I think just the heat just really ramps up the amplification of the lead, I suppose. But that's one thing that's really been proven, is if you have lead in your water and you boil the water, it's a lot more dangerous. So of course, if hot water is going to damage you a lot more than just cold water if it's got a little bit of lead. And one thing is, acceptable amounts of lead is 0, because it's just such a dangerous heavy metal for people that really we cannot have any lead in our water. And those governments over there, especially the local governments, saying, oh, well, if you have under 15 parts per billion, that's okay. But that's fucking bullshit, because it's going to cause a whole bunch of damage to us. There's even 1 or 2 parts per billion of lead in the water. So we can't have any of that shit in the water. So we got to make sure that we fight to make sure they get rid of any contaminants that are in the water. Because they want to regulate to make sure a whole bunch of restaurants are extremely clean, make sure they don't have any contaminants in the food. So why is it they want to do that? To make sure our food is completely safe, but they don't want to do the same thing for water. Because you don't have to go to a restaurant, but at the very least, you got to make sure that, the grocery stores hold to the same health standards to make sure the water or the food we buy is safe to eat. So the same's got to be put on our water, that whether you go to a restaurant, any business, or in your own home, our water has to be safe to drink. Because the government is here to make sure we don't die just of lax regulations. So Jordan did talk about, or he did talk to residents in Flint several times. He did go to a black community, and they talked about how also in Michigan, they're also having problems with schools being defunded, and, governors and some of the mayors, they're shutting down some of the schools in the black communities. And what they've done is they've done that, and then they've had an emergency manager come and take control of a city. And that's what's happened to Flint, is that they have an emergency manager that's managing, the city. And for whatever reason, there's an emergency manager there. What they've done is they've made it so that there's kind of no democracy there, because the mayor kind of doesn't have the power that she's supposed to have, because they just elected a new mayor, because the emergency manager is still kind of running the show in Flint, and he's only answering to the governor, Rick Snyder. So that's very problematic, and they've talked about how they've had an emergency manager over there for several years. So it's not just they've had the emergency manager there for a year or for 2 years, but they've had the emergency manager for, I think, 4 or 5 years now. So that's really problematic. We're just getting rid of a lot of democracy, a lot of checks and balances by, doing this oddball way of controlling the government. So I've also heard that Governor Rick Snyder, he's also changed some of the Michigan laws so that it's hard for him to get impeached by the people. So that's just another way of him just corrupting that the state government is trying to make sure he holds as much power as he can. and make sure that he can't be held liable for all the problems he's caused, because he's caused a lot of fucking problems here, especially with the he's caused a lot of problems, especially with the racial discrimination he's been implementing just this whole time. Then also we have problems with the EPA not really regulating, the state and local government, and saying, we need the local governments to make sure that they're adhering to a safe standard and providing, health guards for the people. And then the state and local governments saying, all these problems is not what we need to be responsible for. The EPA needs to be implementing these and regulating all these issues that's going on. So just the back and forth is really corrupt by saying, nobody's going to get punished for it. Nobody's going to be held accountable. Nobody's going to get fired for this. Nobody's going to go to jail for this, because a lot of this corrupt bullshit really needs to end up with a lot of people being thrown in jail for this. This isn't just Rick Snyder and a couple of his cronies in the state government that's causing all these health and humanitarian issues right now. So we got a lot of work to do to really get all these people, and it's not just we need to fix the water and the water system, because it's thousands of pipes that need to be fixed in Flint, Michigan. So the federal government sent grant money to the state so they could give it to Flint so they could get those pipes fixed. But of course, since Rick Snyder's caused all these problems in the first place, and he hasn't done shit to fix it so far, he just has the money in a state fund or in a state bank account. He hasn't sent it to Flint yet so they could fix all those pipes. It's not just this, but a lot of people are going to need a lot of health care. So a lot of the citizens, they've talked to Jordan, talked about how they're demanding that they need universal health care for the rest of life, because the state and the city have caused all these health problems and all these health issues. And a lot of people are struggling just doing their day-to-day, just going to work and just taking care of their kids and doing any other, normal everyday activities, because all these health problems are impairing their cognitive abilities and their motor skills, and just a lot of mental capacity that they have. So they can't, think as well as they used to. They're having fatigue problems. They're having a lot of pain problems, joint pain, and just a whole bunch of assortment of issues that are really, really problematic. And this shit needs to be fixed right now, because the government works for us, not just for some damn corporations and just a few wealthy people. Maybe the most problematic part of the Flint Water Crisis is that Reuters has done an investigation and has found out that over 3,000 communities across the United States have contaminated water. So it's been a dogfight just trying to get Michigan and get the city of Flint to fix this water issue. But just having, at least 2,900 more issues just like this going on with lead in the water. We need a complete and utter just rebuilding of our government system, because this democracy is not working. Right now we just have a democratic oligarchy where we pretend that we have democracy, but it's really just the corporations and the few wealthy people are running everything. Because if the people ran Flint, Michigan, this water issue would have been fixed 2 years ago. It had been fixed a few months after they discovered that there's a lot of lead in the water. There's issues in East Chicago, Illinois, where there's lead in the soil. And since it's the black community, of course, they've been disregarded too. So a lot of people are really thinking that, well, what the state's doing, at least with Flint, is that they're just dragging their ass on this because they're trying to gentrify it and push all the poor people out. So then they'll reinvest it, so like have wealthy people move in, because they care so much about the people that they're gonna fuck over and just poison a whole bunch of poor and working class people to clean it up for wealthy people. So that's a goddamn shame. That's a goddamn outrage. We gotta fight this fucking shit. So love you guys. Thanks for watching. And don't forget to donate, because I have a GoFundMe account. So I need your help. So I'm going to put a link below so you go help me out. Thanks.